The servers went dark at exactly 9:17 a.m., and in that single silent second, a billion-dollar empire began to collapse. The building was still shiny from the outside, all glass and steel, but inside the air turned heavy with panic as screens froze, alarms blinked red, and the smooth rhythm of a powerful company shattered. This was not a small glitch. This was the system, the core, the brain that held customer data, financial records, contracts, security access, everything. And now it was dead. The CEO stood frozen in his office on the top floor, staring at the black monitor in front of him. Years of control, confidence, and reputation drained from his face. He had built this company from nothing. He knew every chart, every expansion plan, every risk. But this was the one nightmare he had always feared. A total system crash with no backup responding. Within minutes, the building filled with rushed footsteps and hushed voices. Engineers tried restarting servers. Managers called emergency meetings. Phones rang non-stop. Stock prices began slipping. Clients started noticing outages. Social media buzzed with confusion and anger. The CEO felt his chest tighten as he realized how fast everything was unraveling. He had always believed he was prepared for anything. He had the best tech team, the highest paid consultants, the smartest minds in the industry. Yet now, none of them could bring the system back. One by one, they shook their heads, sweat on their brows, eyes avoiding his. Hours passed. The damage grew. Millions were being lost by the minute. Legal risks hovered like dark clouds. The board of directors began calling. Investors demanded answers. The CEO sat down heavily, his hands trembling for the first time in years. For the first time, he felt powerless. As panic spread through the upper floors, life continued quietly on the lower levels of the building. Hallways still needed cleaning. Trash still needed to be emptied. Floors still needed mopping. In the early morning, before the chaos began, the cleaning staff had already started their routine. Among them was a black maid who had worked in that building for years. She moved quietly, efficiently, always unnoticed. She wore the same uniform every day, carried the same cart, and kept her head down. Most executives barely knew she existed. Some didn't even look at her when passing by. Her life was simple but heavy. She worked long hours to support her family. Her husband had passed away years ago, leaving her to raise her son alone. She believed deeply in dignity through work, even when the work was invisible to others. Her son was her pride. A quiet, curious boy who loved computers more than anything. While other kids played outside, he took apart old machines, learned coding from free online videos, and fixed neighbors' broken phones for a few rupees. She couldn't afford expensive schools or tutors, but she encouraged his hunger to learn in every way she could. That morning, her son had come with her to work. It was a rare day when his college was closed, and she couldn't leave him alone at home. He sat in a quiet corner near the maintenance room with his backpack and an old laptop, waiting patiently while she finished her shift. As the system crash shook the building, he noticed something unusual. Engineers rushed past him, their voices tense. Screens around the office floors showed error messages. Security doors malfunctioned. Even the elevator paused briefly before restarting. He watched silently, curiosity turning into concern. He recognized some of the error patterns from his own practice. Something felt familiar. Something felt wrong in a very specific way. Meanwhile, upstairs, the CEO had reached the edge of despair. His trusted experts admitted they were running out of options. A full system rebuild could take days, maybe weeks. The financial and reputational damage would be massive. The company's future hung by a thread. In frustration, the CEO walked out of his office, pacing the hallway like a man lost. His sharp suit no longer gave him confidence. His expensive watch felt heavy on his wrist. He had everything money could buy, yet in that moment, none of it mattered. Downstairs, the maid continued cleaning, but she noticed her son standing now, eyes fixed on a screen near the IT department. He hesitated, unsure of his place. He knew he didn't belong there. He knew people like him were not expected to speak, especially not in a building like this. But he also knew something else. He knew the problem. He gently told his mother what he suspected. She looked at him with concern and fear. She had spent her life being ignored or dismissed. She knew how people like them were treated in places of power. She worried that speaking up could bring trouble. Yet she also trusted her son. She had seen his dedication, his long nights of learning, his quiet brilliance. She believed in him more than anyone ever had. With a deep breath, she guided him toward the IT area, her heart pounding. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand attention. She simply waited for the right moment, standing there with humility and quiet courage. At first, no one noticed them. Then someone did, and frowned. What was the cleaning staff doing there during a crisis? Why was a child in a restricted area? Before security could step in, one exhausted engineer overheard the boy softly explaining a possible cause. The engineer paused, then listened, then asked him to repeat it. What followed was disbelief. The boy spoke clearly, pointing to logs on the screen, explaining how a recent update had conflicted with an older protocol that hadn't been fully disabled. He explained why backups weren't responding and how a manual override could isolate the corrupted node without wiping the entire system. The engineer stared at him, stunned. Others gathered around. Questions were asked. The boy answered calmly, his voice steady despite the pressure. Within minutes, the CEO was informed that a possible solution had come from an unexpected source. Desperate and out of options, he ordered them to try it. The boy was brought upstairs, past glass walls and expensive furniture he had never imagined stepping near. The CEO looked at him, then at his mother standing quietly behind, her hands clasped tightly. There was no time for pride. No room for bias. Only results mattered now. Under supervision, the boy guided the team through the fix. Commands were entered. Systems were isolated. A long, tense silence filled the room. Then one screen flickered back to life. Then another. Then dozens. Servers stabilized. Data streams resumed. Security systems synchronized. The core system began breathing again. Relief washed over the room like a wave. Some people laughed. Others sat down, overwhelmed. A few wiped tears from their eyes. The company had been saved. The CEO felt something he hadn't felt in years. Humility. He looked at the boy, then at the maid who had raised him with so little yet given him so much. In that moment, the CEO realized how blind he had been. How many people he had overlooked. How much potential lived in places he never bothered to see. The story spread quickly through the building, then beyond it. The media picked it up. Headlines spoke of a system crash and an unexpected hero. But what stayed with people was not just the technical fix. It was the lesson. The CEO made changes after that day. Real changes. He invested in mentorship programs. He opened doors for underprivileged talent. He restructured hiring practices. And he made sure the maid was no longer invisible. She was promoted to a stable position with benefits. Her son received a full scholarship and an internship offer that respected his talent, not his background. But the biggest change happened inside the CEO himself. He no longer measured people by their titles, clothes, or roles. He learned that brilliance does not announce itself loudly. Sometimes it pushes a mop. Sometimes it waits quietly in the corner with an old laptop and a sharp mind. The building still stood tall, its glass reflecting the city. The company still made money. But now, its foundation was stronger, built not just on profit, but on respect. And somewhere in that building, a woman who had once been invisible walked a little taller, knowing that dignity and wisdom can rise from the most ignored places, and that hope can come from the very hands the world refuses to see.